Lori Luciola. I'm a head custodian and I work in an elementary school in Ontario. I go out, I check the yard, I make sure there's no sharps in the yard, no garbage, no dog feces. I have the responsibility of looking after the entire school throughout the day. The most important thing, and it's going to sound really funny, is respect. And I know that we cannot negotiate the government to say you're going to respect these people. But the way that they can show respect to us is by having proper staffing in place, making sure that we have the people in our buildings to take care of our special needs students, to take care of every student that comes into the building. And they can do that by making sure that there's enough technology for students to learn with, that there's enough equipment for me to do my job during the day, that there's enough equipment and tools in preparation for maintenance to do their jobs. Having one income, and I have one income, I'm making choices between groceries or the hydro bill this week. So I have 8 years left with the board. I can retire in 8 years. I probably won't be able to, but I won't go on strike for me. For those coming after me. That's why I'll strike.
So that is the most recent in our videos that have been coming out of worker voices across the province. Why it's important that we are fighting and why each of us are saying, count me in. We have more people joining, but we're going to get started being mindful of folks' time. I just wanted to get started this evening and say good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Walton. I'm the president of the OSBCU, and it is absolutely fantastic to see everyone joining us here tonight for our central strike vote meeting. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on what's currently on the table, why the OSBCU Bargaining Committee is calling for a central strike vote, and how the OSBCU will be supporting the campaign to get out the vote over the next 10 days. This webinar is available in both French and English. You may select the language of your choice by going down to the interpretation. It's a little globe at the bottom of your screen. You can click on French or on English. This webinar is one of 2 live sessions that are taking place, but we'll also be recording this session and making it available for workers who are unable to attend because they're working the 2 and 3 jobs that we are always talking about. Across this province, locals are also going to be holding in-person meetings to allow for workers to come together to ask questions and to support workers with the electronic vote. This is absolutely amazing, and we're happy to be supporting these meetings when and where possible. On the webinar tonight, we have thousands of members, including education workers from local school board locals across the province, local presidents, local lead organizers, the OSBCU executive and organizing team, and CUPE national staff servicing school board locals, as well as some special guests. I'm happy to have you all with us tonight as we share important details and the next steps towards a successful central strike, if necessary, to win the gains that you need. We have a lot of information to get through, but we also want to give ample time for questions. We highly recommend having a pen and paper handy to jot down notes and any possible questions that you may have. Questions can be asked by selecting the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and questions will be answered by a team of our staff and leaders, and may also be answered live. Please keep your comments and your questions respectful. We will also be following up with a frequently asked question document following this call. The chat option is not available for this call. I'm now going to turn it over to Todd Canning for the next piece.
Good evening, everyone. We have some special guests with us tonight, and before we begin, I would like to acknowledge these folks. I'm not sure where they are in the country, but they're here with us and we welcome them. Our National President, Mark Hancock, our Secretary Treasurer with the National Office, Candace Rennick. From CUPE Ontario President Fred Hahn. Secretary Treasurer from CUPE Ontario, Yolanda McLean. And from the Ontario Federation of Labour, I believe Janice Folk-Dawson will be with us as well. And so we welcome her. An action of the magnitude that we are building is not about just CUPE OSBCU education workers. In a meme from Jane McLavery, we are asked, how do we win? And the answer is clear. Individualism makes us vulnerable. We need high participation, which is structured, building visible, sustainable majorities, not just within our locals, but within our broader CUPE family. To bring messages of solidarity, the officers of both our provincial division and national union have joined us, just like I welcome. We will be taking 4 questions following their messages, and please indicate that to whom your question is directed. First, we will hear from Yolanda McLean, Secretary Treasurer from CUPE Ontario. Welcome, Yolanda.
Thank you so much. Can folks hear me? Thanks for being here this evening, everyone. My name again is Yolanda McLean. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm joining you from the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. And I have the privilege, as Todd said, serving you as your Secretary Treasurer of CUPE Ontario. And thanks for the introduction, Todd. I recognize a lot of friends here today on the list on the side, people that I've had the privilege of knowing and working with over the years, and some newer folks that I'm so looking forward to meeting you in person someday and working with you over the next couple of months. I've been an education worker my entire time as a CUPE member, so this fight is so personal to me. For decades, our members have gone above and beyond to make our schools run, even when we have been constantly disrespected by the government of the time. We've had our pay frozen, seen our sick days taken away, and every day asked to do more for so much less. And every day we have shown up to keep our schools open and safe, even during a global pandemic, when they're in schools every day, ensuring that our children and our communities had the supports that we all needed. And this constant disrespect has taken a toll. We don't need to look further than the incredible report that the OSBCU produced. I looked at it again today and examined the impact of 10 years of wage cuts to the lives of education workers. And I want to pause here to acknowledge the incredible leadership of Laura in pushing to get our stories at the forefront of the conversations about wages. Because while Lychee would like for people to think about our wages and our demands in terms of numbers on a spreadsheet, we know that it's so much more. Years of cuts have led to our members being some of the lowest paid members of the public services. These cuts need to be examined in terms of the impact that they have on our lives. It's the education worker who has to take a second and third job in order to pay the bills. Some of you are online. It's the member who has to choose between paying for food or the hydro bill. Some of you are online now. And it's the hundreds of members who are leaving the profession despite the fact that they love what they do because it's impossible for them to make ends meet. We're dealing with a record increase in cost of living. And yet this government thinks that we're worth less than 2%. We're fighting for decent wages, increased services of students, and the investment in public education that will bring some stability to the system. And I know that I stole this line from Laura because all we are asking for is a toonie, a loonie, and a quarter an hour for members that are paid on an average of $39,000. And the government response is between 33%. Friends, enough is enough. I have to say, I've been in awe of that collective power that I've felt so far in this organizing work that we've been able to harness over the last few months and in the next few days. Every day I speak to members who are standing up and pushing against the devastation cuts that this government is proposing. And let's be clear, this crisis is 100% the fault of the government. But our members, we are willing to stand, to take a stance, and to say that enough is enough to the disrespect, and enough to the fear-mongering, and enough to the cuts. We're standing up to save the public education system and to make sure that we are treated fairly. For years, we've been the target of cuts and cuts after cuts after cuts, and our members are told that there just isn't enough money to pay them for a fair wage. Unless, of course, you're a member of Ford's government, then 88% of your caucus saw, I don't know, about $16,000 of a pay raise. Our members are told that the coffers are empty unless you're Sobeys, Shoppers, or another multi-million-dollar corporation. Then you can get hundreds of millions of dollars in government contracts and tax breaks. And our members are told that the bank account is empty. Unless you look just a little bit closer, that you can see that this government had $2.7 billion in COVID supports, and they decided not to spend. So, my friends, enough is enough. And that's where we draw the line. Our members deserve fairness, and we're going to do whatever it takes to win this fight. And I'm here to say tonight that CUPE Ontario has your back. We've been working with our board members and our committees to mobilize members from every sector to stand up with our education workers. And if it comes to it, CUPE Ontario will pull out all the stops to support our striking members. Because let's be clear, our members are going to have all the financial support that they need to hold this line. CUPE Ontario will spend whatever we need to support our members. And then we'll go back to our executive board and our members, and we'll dig a little bit deeper, because the fight that we're engaging in, it's for the future of our education system. And it's also for the future of the labor movement. And it is definitely for the future for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Now we will hear from our CUPE Ontario President, Fred Hahn. Over to you, Fred.
Thanks, Todd, and thank you to you all. My name is Fred Hahn, and I'm the president of CUPE Ontario. My pronouns are he and him, and I am joining from the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Wendat people, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. I am so proud to be here with all of you tonight, and I want to start by thanking each and every one of you and your coworkers. The work you do in our schools is so important, whether that be with the youngest learners as an ECE or with kids with special needs as an education assistant, to keep those schools running and functioning, clean and safe as trades and maintenance workers, to make sure they're actually running and things are running on time, as our school secretaries and admin staff do, the tech staff, the child and youth worker staff, the library techs, speech and language technicians. There's so many job classifications. I can't name them all, but we know this. Our schools work because of the skill and passion and dedication of all of you. But we would know that if we looked at the way in which funding and support has come to our members. Yolanda mentioned it. Government after government has, through all kinds of different legislative means, held back our wages and made us fight to defend our funding. It's been happening for too long. But today, when inflation's at 8%, when the cost of food and gas and everything else is skyrocketing, it's simply not sustainable, not for any of our members, and certainly not for all of you. Now, I know that you're bargaining directly with the provincial government and the Council of Trustees, and I know that the government has a majority. It feels as though they have a great deal of power, but we have something that they don't. We have each other. There are more than 55,000 of you in literally every school board across the province who are taking this action together. 55,000 of you. I hope you feel that power. You have the support of CUPE Ontario, all of our members who work in municipalities, for social service agencies, in healthcare, in universities. I hope you feel that power. Our board members have been joining to call through locals, as have I, to call members directly to talk to them about what's at stake. And that work is only going to be advanced as more of our committee members and more of our activists join with you and others to build over the next 10 days. You have the support of other unions. I hope you saw on social media that all of the leaders of the Ontario Federation of Labour visited your bargaining committee and took pictures with them to show physically that support. You have the support of parents and families who know how important the work is that you do. I hope you feel the power of that support. And you have the support of our union from coast to coast to coast. I just came back with Yolanda from National Executive Board meetings where Mark and Candace and leaders from across our country were there. And I'm proud to tell you that we unanimously passed a motion to support you in your bargaining. We spoke at length about what's at stake here. And that motion also said that, look, we know governments can try to bully workers with things like back to work legislation. I'm so proud to tell you that unanimously, leaders from across Canada, from coast to coast to coast, voted to say that should you decide to defy that kind of bullying attempt by this government, your union and members from across Canada will stand with you and protect you in that fight. Now, that is an important backstop. It's important for you to know that, to feel that strength. It's added to the power you're building, which is really what is going to make the difference. It is the power of your vote over the next 10 days. A huge turnout with a strong yes vote. That is what will help to push the government and employers to actually get you a deal that is necessary, that is affordable, that actually helps to not only augment your wages, but protect services and jobs and protect the future of our schools. Look, I know this is your vote, but I want you to know with all of my heart that I am asking you, encouraging you to vote yes. I am reminding you of the support you have from all corners of our union. Now is your time. A supermajority will send a strong message, and it will help to build back supports in public education that matter for our kids, that matter for all of you, that matter for our future. Never doubt, we are with you in this step by step until we win. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Our next speaker joined us at our recent leadership conference where she pledged her support, and her actions have shown us how strongly she believes in our fight. Next up is Candace Rennick, National Secretary Treasurer, QB.
Thanks so much, Lori. It's really great to be here with you all this evening on the eve of this historic province-wide strike vote. And I'm joining you from the Anishinaabe and Algonquin nations. I'm stuck in a quiet corner in the airport, so I apologize if I have a bad connection or perhaps maybe some noise creeps up. But I wanted to start by saying that as a parent of a child in public education in Ontario, I want to say thank you. I know how hard you work. I know how undervalued you are. And I see firsthand the incredible and lasting impact that you have on my son and on so many others. So I want to give a special shout out to any members who are on the call tonight, from Dr. McGilvery, members of QP 555 at the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board. Thank you so much. First and foremost, I want you to know that your struggle for respect and justice has the full backing of our entire union. You just heard that from Fred. QP members across the country see your fight as their fight, and we are inspired by your courage, your strength, your determination, and we know that moving into a strike position is a bold step forward. And we also know that for many of you, it will be the first time that you've ever taken a strike vote. And we know that some of you may be afraid of the consequences. And I want to say that that is absolutely, completely normal. And that's why my message to you tonight is that you will never be alone. that you have what the Ford government and your school board employers will never have, and that is worker solidarity and union power. I want to be very clear. You are members of the largest and strongest union in Canada. We have a strike fund of over $137 million, and you can count on the full resources of your national union. We will back you in whatever strike action you decide to take. And, as you've already heard, Fred said it, if the government moves to legislate you back to work and you decide that it is in your best interest to defy that order, we will be there to support you with that as well. Your fight is a just fight. It is a necessary fight. You all know that. Parents know it. Your neighbors know it. But we also know that it's a tough fight, and it's not one that's going to be won easily. But history has taught us that no fight worth taking on has ever been easy, but yet it has always been absolutely worth it. And we know for sure that if you don't vote yes, you will end up with the status quo or possibly worse. You will make little to no gains. Your real wages will dip even further along with your standard of living. The quality of education in this province will drop, and students will suffer. The stakes, my friends, are incredibly high. This government and your school boards will not give you real wages and better working conditions without a fight. With a strong mandate, your bargaining team will have more power to win a good negotiated settlement, one that gives you a real wage increase, improved working conditions, and better health and safety protections. Without a strike mandate, your bargaining team will be weakened, and you will be at risk of being stuck with a totally unacceptable offer. Now, you know this better than I, but none of you can afford to lose any more purchasing power, especially with the cost of food and gas, coupled now with the rapidly rising inflation rates. CUPE education workers, especially those at the bottom end of the pay scale, need a major wage boost, not the insulting offer that the government has on the table. So it is time to say enough is enough. You want our labor, then you have to pay us our real value. So I urge you to be bold and to be brave and to vote yes. Vote yes and keep organizing in your communities. Keep talking to parent groups and community groups and other education unions. Keep building solidarity and strength on the ground because your efforts are absolutely making a difference. Now, my friends, make absolutely no mistake. Ontario is one of the wealthiest jurisdictions in the world, and that wealth was generated in part by your labor. So it's time that you get your fair share, and it's time to fight for the respect and the fairness that you all deserve. And by taking bold collective action, you will win. And when you win, all workers will win, and Ontario's education system will be better for our children. And I want you to know and believe and remember that you are not alone. You will never be alone. We will win this fight together. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Candace. And last but not least, we are pleased to welcome Mark Hancock, President of CUPE National.
Great. Thank you very much. And good evening, sisters, brothers, and friends. I'm also joining you from the Algonquin-Anishinaabe territory. And actually, I'm in the parking lot of the airport because I speak a little louder and I didn't want to scare other passengers as they're about to get on the planes. But it is a great honor to be here tonight, joining with some great, amazing leaders from across Ontario and with education workers and activists from every corner of the province on the eve of this incredibly important strike vote. I think everybody with us tonight understands what a critical moment we're in right now. Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce want to take a wrecking ball to public education in this province. They want to shortchange our kids. And they want to nickel and dime the education workers who work so hard every day to give our kids a good start in life. And guess what? We're the only thing standing in their way. So, of course, as we look ahead to this critical strike vote, there is nothing that Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce would rather see than us divided. But my friends, I have a feeling that they're about to be disappointed. In the coming days, I think we're going to send a message to the Ford government that they won't like and that they won't forget. Because education workers in this province have been through hell the past 2.5 years. We've weathered the pandemic, and risks to our health. We've endured their cuts that left classrooms unsafe and underfunded. And after all that, all of our members are asking us for is a modest and a fair wage increase to help keep pace with inflation that is skyrocketing throughout this province and throughout this country. A toonie, a loonie, and a quarter. Well, the Ford government thinks that we should do with pennies on the dollar. He's offering our lowest paid members just a 2% wage increase. And those earning above $40,000 a year, he's offering 1.25%. What planet is he on? But that isn't just a slap in the face in these inflationary times that we're living through. You look back at the last number of years, since 2012, education workers have had increases of a mere 8.8% since then. And since then, inflation has been over 19.5% for that same period. Add it all up, my friends, and this government is asking our members to take a huge pay cut. That pay cut will crush our members under the cost of living. And to make things worse, they have concessions on the table that we will never agree to. Put it all together, and it's not a serious offer. And you know what? It's not a respectful offer either. It's not worth the paper that it was written on, and it sure isn't something that heroes should be expected to take. And while I can't say I'm surprised, sisters and brothers, my friends, it remains so disappointing to see that our members have had to endure just to get a little respect and a little fair treatment. But this is CUPE, and we rarely get to take the easy road. And fighting back and winning against right-wing governments who want to attack public services and attack the public service workers is what we do best. Even then, I know this is a big fight. This might feel like David versus Goliath, kind of. But I just want to remind everyone here that we saw a David versus Goliath fight last fall in New Brunswick, where our 20,000 members were facing off against a conservative government like the one we have here in Ontario. A government that didn't want to give them a pay bump and respect that they so desperately deserved. Well, our members in New Brunswick didn't get discouraged. They got engaged. They coordinated and they mobilized. They fought hard and they fought smart against a conservative government that didn't think that they stood a chance. And because of their determination and their commitment to each other, my friends, David beat Goliath in New Brunswick. And we can do that here in Ontario too. We have the power to win wages, job security, and better working conditions that our 55,000 members across Ontario deserve. And we have shown time and time again, my friends, that when our members are united, when we're engaged and we're determined, there is nothing that we cannot achieve. And that's the message that we have to send to Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce in the coming days. By giving your bargaining committee a strong and powerful strike mandate, we can show the Ford government that yes, we're united. And yes, we are engaged. And we can show them just how determined we are to fight for a fair deal for our 55,000 members province-wide. Now, of course, we don't want to go on strike. We want to be at work, doing what we love doing, helping kids, and doing our part for public education. But the way I see it at the end of the day, there's one simple truth. Education workers across Ontario have earned a fair wage increase. And whether the Ford government wants to do this the easy way, or if they want to do this the hard way, we're damn well going to get it. Your fight is our fight, my friends. You have the full force of 700,000 CUPE members nationwide backing you. And you can count on us to support you every step of the way. Solidarity, my friends.
Thank you, Mark. I'm now going to turn it back over to Laura to open up the floor for questions for our provincial and national officers.
Thanks, Lori. So we are going to take 4 questions. And for this, I'm going to have, if you have a question for Fred or Yolanda, Mark or Candace, I ask that you raise your hand and I'll invite you to speak. I'm going to, and it's literally the first 4. That's how I'm doing it. Nothing secretive, nothing exciting. So the first one is Franca Quinteri, and I'm just going to allow her to talk. Just bear with me here. Is it? Franca, I just need you to unmute your mic, please. Franca, are you there? All right, I'm going to go to the next one. I have Salwa Curry Kamar. Salwa, if you could unmute your mic, please. Hmm? We're going to try this one more time. We're going to go to Christina Bacci, please. Christina, just going to allow you to talk. Christina?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Oh, perfect. Hi, I believe Candice mentioned about if the government does legislate us back to work, that we have the support of QP National to support our members. Can you talk a little bit about what that means exactly? Does that mean we will continue to strike even though we were legislated back to work?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Christina. Ultimately, that will be a decision for the members of the OSBCU to make when that time comes. I know that there will be a forum for you folks to have that discussion and make that determination as a collective group. In the event that you see it fit to remain out on strike and fight for the demands that you're fighting for in this round of bargaining, there very well could be risks and consequences associated with that. There could be fines for individual members. There could be fines for locals. And the debate that we had at our National Executive Board said that we're going to support members in the event they took that decision, that we weren't going to let members pay for those fines themselves, that within all of our financial capacity, we would support members in covering those fines so that they could take this action if they deemed necessary without the potential risk of a financial barrier.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hello, Miss Walton. I work for QP 1196. Good union, amazing union. I live north of the boards I work for, and times are tough. Everyone knows that. But what is the union going to do if the workers lose their cars, or get their cars taken away because they can't make the payments on time? We can't get to work. That's what I'm concerned about the most. Is I need my car to get to work, as many other people do, right? But what is the union, what is OPSU going to do for those people who are going to help, who need to get to work eventually?
So I don't think OPSU is going to do anything for us. Totally different union, but
Sorry.
No worries at all. Hey, listen, if they want to pay for our cars, I'm good with that too. Who's kidding who? But
no, not pay for our cars, but what if we miss a payment?
Sure thing,
and then we get our cars taken away. That's what I'm petrified about.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair question. I'm going to turn that over to the National Secretary Treasurer to help you out to discuss the National Strike Fund regulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, the strike fund regulations obviously will begin to pay strike pay from day one to all of members. There's an escalating trigger of that strike pay moving up as time goes along. But with respect to your question specifically around car payments or mortgage payments, QP can and has in the past and will help intervene with your financial institutes, your banks. We can send letters and lobby your financial institutes to provide some relief in the event that you're experiencing hardship. And the vast majority of the time, the financial institutes actually provide some relief under the circumstances. And so that is a role that our offices will play should you experience any kind of hardship with either, your car payment or your mortgage or whatever else it may be. We have resources in place that can help negotiate with your financial institutions on those matters.
Thanks, Candace. I appreciate that. I'm now going to go to Margaret Scarcello. I hope I have said that name right. I apologize if I haven't. Margaret, go ahead.
Hi. Yes, you said it right. I have a question for you. I've never gone on strike before. I had an injury a while back, and I'm not able to stay standing for long periods of time. Am I able to bring a folding chair with me?
So I'm going to turn that over to any of the officers who are interested in answering that. And just a reminder, the questions are for the officers, either the provincial division or the national division. So if one of the officers wanted to answer, Margaret, that'd be great.
Sure, why don't I start and then everybody can correct my answer. Absolutely, bring a cot with you, for crying out loud. Bring anything you need. And, you're going to work with your locals around what the strike duty looks like, right? I mean, the most often strike duty is actually picketing. But yeah, bring a cooler, bring some pops, bring a radio. This is something we hate doing. It's the last thing that anybody wants to do is to walk a picket line. But if you need a chair, if you need a stool, if you need something like that, absolutely bring it with you.
Thanks, Mark. And there will be, with your regional headquarters, there will be, different opportunities for accommodated strike duty as well, if that's something that needs to happen. And your regional strike headquarters will be helping out. And our last question today is going to come from Doris. Doris, which of the officers were you looking to ask a question to? Just gonna. Yeah, Doris is there. Hi, Doris.
There.
Hi.
How are you guys doing tonight? Thank you.
Good, thanks.
Question surrounding, you said that it's 17 days after somebody initiates the no board that we could go on strike. During that 17-day period, can the government then turn around and make us go back? Like what is the process in that?
Fred or Candace, Mark, anyone want to take that one?
I'm
Why
happy
don't I
to
just jump in.
Oh, you're gonna do it?
Yeah, you take the technical part. I'll jump in after you, Fred. Go ahead, bud.
Well, look, thanks for the question. And the truth of the matter is, government can try at any point to legislate, and it's why we're talking. And I'm so proud that the school board, bargaining committee has been talking so overtly with you all about this, because we're not new. We've seen the power of government. We know what that means. And should they move to do that, that's when all of you will then make a decision about what you want to do next. And by God, I hope that if they're stupid enough to try to take on all 55,000 of you and all the rest of us in QP Ontario and our national union and the support we're building from parents and families, then hey, we can and should push back against that. But what we've got to do is send this a first step. The first step is this strong strike vote to send a strong message that you are united and that you are willing to fight. That is the first step.
Mark, I don't know how you follow
I'll
that.
just add to that.
Here it is.
Fred nailed it. And, the other thing here, and we had such a great discussion at the National Executive Board yesterday. It was part of Candace's report to the National Board. And we talked about how we as a national union, how our 700,000 members, how our leaders across this country can support our 55,000 members, just like they did in New Brunswick last fall. And you heard me talk about that. But one thing to remember, friends, is that nobody gave workers the right to join a union. Nobody gave workers the right to withdraw their services to take job action. Nobody gave workers the right to strike. That was taken. And, that was, we all stand on the folks that came before us. We stand on their shoulders. And I get it's there's a lot of conversations that need to happen. There's anxieties, and nobody wants to do this. This really is the final step. And at some point, my friends, we've got to stand up to governments. We've got to stand up to these employers. We've got to make it known that the heroes during the pandemic, like our 55,000 members in education and all the other members that we represent that got our country through this pandemic. They deserve the respect, not just the spoken words, but the respect when it comes to their income. They deserve to make a living wage that they continue to provide for their families. And without that, what the hell are we doing? You belong to the biggest union in the country. You belong to the best union in the country. And my friends, I guarantee you there's going to be lots of questions, there's going to be lots of discussions, but know that Candace, Fred, Yolanda, and I, and the rest of the National Executive Board, and all of our awesome staff, some of whom are on the call tonight, are going to be with you every step of the way, my friends.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to thank Mark and Candace, Fred, and Yolanda for joining us tonight. I know that some of them are in different stages of travel to get to their next destinations. And so carving out this time, I super appreciate it. And I know that the workers and the members of OSBCU appreciate it as well. So listen, folks, we've been here before. In fact, I was doing some research for what I was going to say tonight, and I realized that for the last decade, we have taken strike votes around issues being negotiated under a cloud of legislation. Back in 2012, we had a coordinated local strike vote to push back on the Putting Students First Act. Many of you would remember it as Bill 115. And it was an act that ripped our collective agreements apart. In 2015, we casted our ballots for our first central strike mandate under the School Board Collective Bargaining, our School Board Collective Bargaining Act. And it was legislation that was used to help ram through net zero bargaining that the government wanted, and it resulted in another 2 years of wage freezes. 2019, we again received a strike mandate, even though Bill 124, which capped our wages, had already been introduced and was making its way to being passed. So what's the difference this time? Frankly, I'm fed up. And you should be too. Year after year, governments have literally robbed you of what is rightfully yours. The Liberals froze your wages. The Conservatives capped them. Each time we go to the table, the government attempts to interfere with our rights to freely negotiate. And I want to address the issue of legislation right off the top. The best way to avoid legislation is with a supermajority of workers exercising their rights and committing to strike if necessary. And I'm going to say that again. The best way to avoid legislation is with a supermajority of workers exercising their rights and committing to strike if necessary. The collective power that we are building is something that has not been seen in any union or any government in a very long time. They simply don't believe we can do it. So prove them wrong. While the government has the ability to use legislation, this doesn't come without a political cost to them. After all, this is the party that campaigns on working for workers. Bullying tactics, such as legislation, are not going to work. And let's talk about interest arbitration. Interest arbitration is what will likely happen in the event that the government uses legislation to force us back to work or deems us essential. I've seen many suggest that this would be a good thing. In short, interest arbitration will not create the conditions that will see the wins that you as workers need. In fact, interest arbitration favors the status quo. And as we all know, the status quo is simply not good enough for you. It's not good enough for your coworkers, and it's not good enough for the students and families that we proudly serve. So what do we do, Laura? In fact, I think this is the question that I most frequently receive. What do we do? My answer has always been, the workers will decide what to do. In the event that a real threat of legislation is made by the government, the OSBCU will commit to hosting mass membership meetings, which will provide space for workers to give direction on next steps, as well as a leadership meeting to discuss. Over the last 9 months, our message has been clear. This is not a leader-led campaign. This is a worker-first campaign. You, as workers, will decide what you, as workers, will do moving forward. Now that we've addressed that issue, I want to circle back to why the central bargaining team has brought you all here tonight and why we're asking for a strike vote at this time. To do that, I'd like to welcome to bargaining committee members Joe, Mike, Devin, and Keith.
From the beginning, we have been clear that the average wage of $39,000 a year is not enough for CUPE workers anymore. We have not moved from our proposal of $3.25 per hour per year of the collective agreement. The government and school boards have not moved from their counteroffer of 2% for anyone under 40,000 or 1.25% for anyone over 40,000. We have a policy that we do not negotiate two-tier agreements, and their offer is just that, as well as completely insulting. We know that unfilled vacancies continue to be a big problem in our school boards, leading to workers taking on extra workloads and routines and boards requesting students stay home, citing a lack of EA staffing. One of the biggest reasons for the lack of casual staff is poor wages they receive. Our proposal would see casuals being paid at the start rate. The government and the school boards clearly have no issues with their staffing problems, as they refused to address the issue this week at the table.
Our job security language has been problematic since it was first negotiated in 2015. Boards have continuously taken advantage of the expiry date and chosen to lay off staff and rescind postings unnecessarily. They then expect us to fight to get additional funding so that they can hire back whomever they choose. Our proposal would see the elimination of the expiry date and provide service security for our students and real job security for you. Instead, your bosses are focused on achieving even more flexibility. We have asked for more funding to ensure proper service levels for our students, especially as we continue life in a pandemic. The government and board have shown their lack of concern about the services our students receive by continuing to say no. And if the terrible wage offer and lack of job security weren't enough, your school boards and government is completely acceptable to give you only 25% of your wage should you qualify for the first 5 days of your short-term disability leave. This is a clear concession. We have a policy that we do not accept concessions.
For over a decade, there has been a concern around paid prep time for workers who work directly with students, such as DECEs, EAs, instructors, etc. Our proposal would see that this work be part of the paid work day. Instead, the school boards and government would rather exploit workers by not providing them prep time and expect them to work be done on their own time. Many of our youngest students have spent the majority of their lives navigating a pandemic. They did not get to experience playgroups and daycares in the same way. Rather than accepting our proposal that would see a DECE in every kindergarten classroom to enrich the play-based learning that is so beneficial, school boards and the government would rather rob our youngest learners of the enriched learning that they deserve. Our working conditions survey showed that the average OSBCU member works approximately 2 weeks for free simply because they do not have enough hours to complete their work. Our proposal of a minimum standard of hours of workers would ensure that workers stop working for free, but would improve the services we proudly provide. Yesterday, the government refused to even discuss this opportunity.
Professional development has been problematic for education workers for years. PD days are often dedicated to the needs of teachers, while education workers are ignored. Our proposals for funding for PD would see education workers professional development happen with collaboration with CUPE workers. Not only does the government and school boards not want to collaborate on what PD should be provided, but they are unwilling to provide funding, something which they acknowledge is provided to teachers. While our best benefit plan continues to be the best run benefit plan within the sector, issues around an aging membership and inflation means that pressure are being applied to the trust. Information has been shared to CUPE's trustees and the government and CTA trustees that improvements on funding must happen to ensure that our trust continues to function without loss of benefits or increased premiums to the members, that government and school boards continue to show their disrespect to you by refusing to talk about these issues.
Thank you, Keith, Devin, Mike, and Joe. Many of you will have heard Leachy's claim that our demands, your demands, are unreasonable. The reality is far from the truth. To share why your demands are not only reasonable, but also affordable and necessary, I will now turn to Dan Crow.
Thanks, Laura. Since 2012, school board workers' wages in Ontario have consistently fallen behind inflation. In large part, that is because of legislation that has limited our ability to make wage gains, interference with free collective bargaining. From 2012 to the end of 2021, inflation was 19.5%, and school board workers' wages, your wages, improved by only 8.8%. That works out to a 10.7% wage cut in just one decade. Hold on a sec. Back it up, thanks. Starting in late 2021, inflation started to skyrocket. This graph shows the gap between inflation and our members' wages if no wage improvement was made. Over the period of the next 3 years, based on projections by the Bank of Canada, inflation will increase by another 15 to 17%. This means in the absence of a substantial wage increase, our members will have seen roughly a 25% wage cut, a quarter of your wages cut over the past 13 years. That shows exactly why our proposals are necessary. Next slide, please. Over the course of preparing for bargaining, we have done a number of surveys. We first surveyed members in March of 2021. And in that survey, before inflation started to peak, members were very clear that their top priorities were wages and job security. Later in 2021, we did a survey of our members' wages, knowing that they had fallen behind inflation because of interference with free collective bargaining. And we found that our members have faced substantial hardship as a result of government interference and low wages. In fact, we found that 51% of our members work 2 or more jobs in order to make ends meet. 91% of our members face some kind of financial hardship as a result of low wage increases. 95% have felt personal hardship as a result of this, including stress and anxiety about not being able to pay the bills. We followed this up in March of this year with a working conditions survey. We found that 90.7% of our members say that their workload has increased over the last 3 years. 75.3% of members say that they do unpaid work. The average member does 92.4 minutes of unpaid work each week. In a 43-week school year, that works out to 66.2 hours of unpaid work. All of this says that we need substantial wage increases to meet our members' needs, and we need increased staffing levels and job security in order to make sure our members have the hours of work that they need, and a sufficient number of coworkers to get the job done properly. And all of those will improve the quality of education for students. Next slide, please. And the government claims that our proposals are not affordable. That's simply not true. This graph shows the increase in government revenues from 2012-13 to the projected level of revenue starting in 2024-25. That is the row of big blue bars. Those little orange nubs beside those big blue bars are the total cost of CUPE education workers' wages. Those little nubs are getting bigger, a little bit bigger every year. And in this graph, I included the cost of our wage proposal. And we look that in 2024-25, that little orange nub, that cost of our members' wages, is insignificant in comparison to the amount of money this government is taking in. It is absolutely affordable to give our members a substantial wage increase and increased staffing levels, more hours of work. Next slide, please. I wanted to show this as well as another measure of affordability. This shows our members' wages as a percentage of total government revenue. You see from 2012, 2013, right through to 2021-22, there's a noticeable decline in the proportion of government revenue that is taken up by our wages. Essentially, our wages become smaller and smaller and smaller in relation to total government revenue over time. If we were to get the $3.25 an hour in each year of the collective agreement, that trend would start to reverse. However, in 2024-25, based on the government's own projections about its revenue, our members' wages as a percentage of total revenue will still be lower than it was in 2012-13, 2013-14, and 2014-15. As a proportion of government revenue, we would only get back up to where we were in 2015, roughly a decade before the end of the next collective agreement. It is simply not true that this government cannot afford what we have put on the table. And I'll pass it back to you, Laura.
Thanks, Dan. Over to you, Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Laura. We've given you a significant amount of information tonight. Today at 12:01 a.m., the Central Strike vote will open. Please ensure that you vote. But after you vote, there are a few pieces that you can do to help with our Get Out the Vote campaign. Attend your local strike meetings. Take every opportunity at work and through social media to encourage your coworkers to vote. Help support members who may be having difficulty voting. Volunteer to help your local. Make phone calls to members reminding them to vote. And once you've voted, post a photo of yourself on social media with the hashtag OSBCU GOTV 2022 and encourage others to do the same.
Thanks, Stephanie. Dave?
Thanks, Laura. So we know that we've had a number of questions in the chat around the credentials that were sent out today or yesterday for the vote that's happening, as Steph just said, starting at midnight tonight. If you haven't received your credentials, we are getting a bunch of those questions. The first thing that you should do is make sure that you check the spam and junk folders in your email account to make sure that it didn't get redirected there. You're looking for an email from credentials@dataonthespot.com. You can put that into your search bar and see if you've received the email. You should also check with your local to make sure what email address was provided and what they have on file for you. If you're from a local that has a CUPE local email address, make sure that you know how to access that account to be able to access your ballot, and check with your local to make sure that they have a good, a working email address for you. And finally, if you are looking for technical support, you can reach out to DOTS directly by emailing credentials@dataonthespot.com, or you can call their helpline toll free at 1-833-368-7123. Their lines are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you call outside of those hours, leave a message and someone will call you back. That number again is 1-833-368-7123. But the first and most important step is to check with your local and make sure what email address they have on file for you and what email address was provided to DOTS to make sure that you're looking in the right place. Thanks very much. Back to you, Laura.
Thanks, Dave. And Dave, maybe you could pop that in that number and that email into the chat bar so that people could copy and paste it in case that they're having some struggles.
Absolutely.
So I want to acknowledge the diversity in how people are feeling right now. Many of you are ready to vote yes right away. You're setting your alarm, 12:01 is going to come and you're going to get up and you're going to vote right away. Some of you may be more hesitant. What I do know is that solidarity, showing the strength of 55,000 strong across this province, has never been more critical. We need a majority to beat the majority. It is in us to win. I also want to acknowledge that each of you is on the cusp of making history. Never in recent history has there been a worker-centered campaign of this magnitude. Labor unions from all sectors in CUPE and beyond are watching you and they're cheering you on. You heard tonight from our provincial leaders and from our national leaders. They are lining up every avenue of support possible across the province and across the country. Board members, committee members from both CUPE Ontario and CUPE National are volunteering their time to support our fight. Collectively, we are fighting for us and for the workers that will come after us. And together, we will win. I'm now going to turn it to the questions that we have. And I'm just going to start at the top and try and get down to the bottom. So let's see how this all goes. And Ashley, I believe we answered your question about the vehicle, and those will be in place. Donna Oberholzer says, can we be assured that CUPE will not recommend to accept a contract that does not include a significant pay increase and one that contains concessions if we vote yes? I'm going to say this, and I'll be extremely clear. You decide the contract that gets accepted. There may be times, there may be a situation where we are forced to bring an agreement to you, but you will decide as workers. And that is why we have committed to full transparency. You can see what has been presented. You can see what's been offered. You will know all the way along what is happening. This is not going to be a bunch of leaders telling people how to vote, but a bunch of workers telling leaders when it's time to vote. When will we get equal pay across the board? Not fair that staff working for York are $10 an hour behind all other boards. And Gabriella, we hear that a lot. And I want to be fair, we do hear that a lot. And that's because pay rates are historic, right? They were set long before there was any central bargaining. One of the pieces we have in our proposal that the government is currently ignoring is a provincial wage committee to look at these issues. But we're going to have to fight like hell to get this, and that's why we're here today. How do I find out about the supports? Should we defy back to work legislation? I think you heard very clearly from Candace today. The National Executive Board has passed a motion to indemnify workers if they choose to defy legislation and not to go back to work. And when that time comes, OSBCU has made a commitment that we will be having mass meetings across this province to hear from workers, and you will direct us with what you want to do. If you want to defy, that is what we'll do. If you don't want to defy, that is what we'll do. But rest assured, we have people who have fought to ensure that any fines are taken care of. And I think that is huge. I don't know if maybe people really recognize just how huge it is, but it is quite significant. As an EA, if I vote yes and I get ordered back, what then? I struggle financially, and what then? Work to rule does not work. I hear you, sister. My coworkers all say the same. We can't say no when a child is at risk. Willing to say yes, but scared for nothing. Rita, what I would suggest to you is whether you're an EA, a custodian, a secretary, an IT, a CYW, a communication disorder assistant, one of our speech pathologists, all of us are in the same boat. And we all need to make the commitment to each other that we are going to fight. And one person posted in Facebook the other day, good luck arresting 55,000 of us and good luck firing 55,000 of us. There aren't anybody ready to take our jobs now. But what we need to do is stand in solidarity and be strong together. Can we address members wondering if they go to work rather than picketing? What would that look like and what would it mean for them? Well, listen, the first thing I would say is before we worry about people crossing a picket line, let's make sure we're having conversations with them now. Let's make sure that we're having conversations with every worker in our work sites and understanding why it is so important. Maybe the wage isn't important to them, but job security is, because they're sick and tired of doing somebody else's routine because the custodian that they shared a routine with is now gone. Let's be talking to them first, but let's be clear. As union members, we should be making the commitment to each other not to weaken our picket lines by crossing them, but standing in solidarity, because that's how we're going to win together. Mona is asking, not our Mona, but Mona, a different Mona, how exactly will my union support me if I need to defy back to work legislation? And Mona, I think, we've addressed that. We have it in our, just heard from our National Secretary Treasurer that they are making arrangements to support all workers should they choose to defy back to work legislation. And so I hope that helps you out. Addressing instructing online and negotiations. Unfortunately, instructing online is not a central topic, but I would ask you to reach out to your local to ensure that that has been included in their local negotiations. That's Michelle. Laura, good name. One of my colleagues just tried to register for this. Oh, okay. Don't worry, Laura. We are also going to be putting it on our YouTube page, and so they can follow along there as well. And there's another one tomorrow. If they don't work during the day, there's another one tomorrow at 11. Sandra, what are the consequences for defying back to work order by the provincial government? So for that, I am going to turn it to Mona or Alex. I'm not sure which one of you want to take on the consequences.
Well, there's fines, obviously. Yeah, there could be any number of consequences, and truly, the reality is that the more people who defy legislation together, the least likely those come to pass, right? If you've got one or two people defying legislation, then yeah, those people will be made. They'll make an example of them. If you had 55,000 people defying legislation, I'm not sure what they could do. So I guess that's the real answer. Is it comes down to the power of the majority and standing together and standing strong together.
Awesome. Thanks, Mona. If you're on maternity leave, short-term disability, long-term, do you still need to fill out the strike pay form? For this, I'm wondering, is Sarah on that she could answer that? Sarah, there she is.
Hi, sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure thing. If you're on maternity leave, short-term disability, or long-term disability leave, do you still need to fill out the strike pay form?
I think locals are encouraging everybody to fill out the strike pay, the Form E, but you can you can also fill it out later. You can fill it out if and when you return to work and you find yourself on strike, then you can fill it out then. So I think both are fine.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Jamie, is the OSBCU considering the two-tiered wage offer from the government and CTA, asking for those who may not be aware? We don't do two-tiered agreements. And so, no, the answer is no. Every single worker deserves a fair wage increase. We are not interested in two tiers. Teresa, if the government mandates us back to work, are they allowed to do that? Well, it's the government, so let's be honest. I mean, I don't think they should have been allowed to wear goofy hats and look like Howdy Doody yesterday, but here we are. Are they allowed, and what happens if we go back to work to rule? So this is a question that's come up, and maybe Alex or Mona can address it. We often get a question of, if we go on strike and we're legislated back, can we do work to rule? And Alex or Mona, would you like to take that one?
I'm happy to take it since Mona took the last one. So yeah, I mean, work to rule is a form of strike, because strike is very broadly defined in our legislation. So there's not a really easy answer to say that, if we're legislated well, we could just move to work to rule. Obviously, part of the conversation today is considering the responses to legislation. I do want to sort of touch on one other point that was raised. Can the government do this? Of course, as you know, as I'm sure you've read about, unions often engage in constitutional court challenges of legislation, which determine whether the government can do something in some sense. And that is certainly something that we should always have on the table as an option. But we also know that those court challenges have not got the gains for our members, for all of you, that we need. And a great example is Bill 115, right? That's one that Laura already talked about today, where we know that, folks got, I think it was between $800 and $900 on a one-time basis, right? But we know that the average CUPE member who's been working since 2012 in the school board sector has already lost $15,000 in wages, compared to if we had gotten a 2% wage increase in those years of Bill 115. So it's not to say that we would never do a court challenge of legislation, but we know how far that has fallen short just on its own in getting the gains that we need. And so that's why we're having these conversations about how to build our collective power.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate that. The money is one thing, but shortage of staff is a big thing. No supplies when we're absent, therefore having to do double the work. Absolutely. And Phyllis, this has been brought up at the table several times, and we're going to keep at it. There is a real issue, and one of the issues is the working conditions for casuals as well, and that's why we fight for everyone. Will the union fight to get more working days for student supervisors? Our proposal is up. You will see how we're looking to get more hours and more time, more people. But I want to be clear, there's no such thing as the union. You are the union, and we fight to get more for each other. Siham, I agree. Brothers and sisters, we have to stand strong. I absolutely agree. Mona, for Carl's, would you like to take Carl's, because it's in French, so I just want to make sure that I don't mess it up. You're muted, Mona.
I know. I have to find Carl's. Laisse-moi le trouver.
It's another question about the differences between different school boards.
C'est définitivement une proposition du syndicat. Vous parlez du 3.25. Est-ce que c'est l'équité salariale locale est un point qui sera supporté pour le reste de nos confrères? Les techniciens pour l'école publique prennent presque $6 de l'heure de plus que moi et travaillent dans la même ville. Nous avons besoin d'être unis. Oui, Carl, et c'est définitivement quelque chose qui est important pour nous et ça fait partie de nos propositions et on a une proposition directe là-dessus pour ajuster les salaires et pour aussi avoir une comité qui regarderait les salaires dans des endroits qui sont proches et pour adresser cette inégalité.
Merci, Mona. Martha, I've heard comments that a CUPE strike won't have much impact. I love this one, and I'm going to address it happily. 3 years ago, we were sitting there and we were ready to go on strike, and school boards were shutting down left, right, and center. And you want to know why? because CUPE is the only union that has the ability to shut down school boards because of the breadth and diversity of the workers that we have under our umbrella. And so, sure, you can say students and teachers are just going to pivot, but the IT people who supported that pivot for the last 2 years will be on strike. The clerical folks that supported the pickup and drop off will be on strike. The EAs that supported the learning, the ECEs that supported the learning will be on strike. So, I think a lot of times I hear people trying to diminish your power, and the best way to diminish your power is to give it away. We don't need to give away our power. We have the power to make this happen. And sure, you can pivot online. They tried that in New Brunswick, and parents brought their children to the line for online learning because they weren't interested in doing another day of remote learning. And that is something that we're going to need to work towards. So Martha, I hope that helps you out. Matthew, you made me smile with this one. Are you saying that CUPE National will support us like France? When one goes on strike, we all go on strike, shut down the country, and slap all provincial governments to get to the point. Well, the slapping of provincial governments is tempting. And listen, we've been speaking to the OFL. Fred and I have been speaking to the OFL with Yolanda and Stephanie. We are calling on within Ontario for there to be solidarity as we move forward. It's hard. We have been doing this organizing work for months. We are way ahead of where others are. But yes, I believe that there is going to be support, and we are going to continue to push for more and more support as we go. I don't think we're quite France yet, but here we are. I have to say that as a new secretary and having a new system working after hours, my board had the nerve to ask all secretaries who are stressed out and want to walk out of schools if anyone can train for $25 a day. Yep, Julia, this is why we have to push back. The amount of unpaid or underpaid work is absolutely beyond the pale. Katie Johnson, what about those who have daycare costs and have to give 2 weeks notice to be refunded? Katie, what I'm going to tell you is that by law, we must give 5 days notice before we do go on strike. So that will be something that, first of all, will help out everybody. And if there are additional hardships, each local should be developing a hardship fund to help their workers as we move in if there are situations such as that. Megan, what do we do for childcare? Regionally, I'm going to turn this over to Sarah because I know regionally this has been a question that has come up time and time again. Sarah, maybe you can talk about what some of the folks are considering.
Sure. Yeah, so regional strike committees are meeting to strategize about this important issue. They're coming up with different ideas. Some of those ideas include, for example, pairing up members who have kids who would be home in the event of a strike so that they're picketing on opposite shifts and can care for each other's kids in their own homes. Other regions are looking at more collective childcare arrangements. For example, the possibility of having members who are ECEs who want to actually perform childcare as potentially an alternate strike duty and receive strike pay for that, in basements that are rented out, that kind of thing. So it's a combination of kind of individual and collective arrangements that are being looked at. And after the strike vote, that'll be a focus for regional strike committees.
Awesome. And a shout out to Melissa who says, stand together, stand strong. I think that is so true. William, what if striking does not draw enough attention? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, we're not going to wait to go on strike to draw attention. We're going to draw attention now. We're going to draw attention by having a strike, but we're going to draw attention by having conversations in our communities and with parents and explain the importance and why we are currently the only people fighting for the services their kids need. Let's not wait until a picket line to start communicating to the public. Let's do it tomorrow. Cynthia, are you allowed to continue working while on strike? You can work at a second job or a third job if you have one. But no, working in your school board job would be crossing the picket line and not advised, I guess is what we would say. Will we go straight to strike and skip work to rule? I'm going to tell you, Laura, again, great name. It was passed at our leadership meeting that we will go straight to strike and not do work to rule. It has been extremely clear all throughout our time in the last 3 years that work to rule has not been effective. And quite frankly, the demands that you have as workers require a lot more pressure than just removing some services during the workday. And what if we're legislated back to work? Janet, again, I'm going to say it's going to be on you and how we are willing to fight. Brad is saying the government did it and CUPE did nothing. And I want to just address this, Brad. Never in my career have I seen, and I see Fred here and I see several other long-time, Yolanda's here, several long-time CUPE activists. Never in my lifetime, and my very first book off with CUPE was Bill 115, never in my lifetime have I seen the organization of members and of workers the way I have now. And I'm telling you, if we could have done this back in the Bill 115 days, by God, I don't think that we would have done it. And we didn't, and we've learned from it, and that's why we're fighting like hell now. Yeah, if you're legislated back to work and you don't return to work, you are illegally striking, and Mona has addressed that. Mona, we answered your question. If teachers go back to remote, would that be considered crossing the picket line? And it's a discussion that we are having currently. Is that considered crossing the picket line? And that will be something for the teachers' unions to address. The next thing I want to address, because it's come up a few times, is when do we go on strike? To be clear, we have a strike vote. The strike vote starts tomorrow at 12:01, right, in the morning, and it goes until 6 p.m. October 2nd, 10 days. We will announce the results on Monday, October 3rd. That does not mean we're in a legal strike position, friends. What needs to happen is we need to request a no board report. Once we receive that, a countdown of 17 days begins. And once we have run that clock out, we would then be in a legal strike position. Before that happens, there will be a membership meeting to discuss next steps, things like questions like you have about childcare, picket lines, all that good stuff. There will be multitude of opportunities to discuss that. So no, we are not going on strike October 3rd. We are not even in a strike position October 3rd. When and if we do the no board request, we will make sure to be communicating it as we have all the way along. I do enjoy that David Werner has said, if we vote 100%, the government will be shaking in their boots. David, amen. Let's go for it. Let's get those people out. How will CUPE National be supporting members if they decide to defy back to work legislation? How will that look and what does that mean? Will we still receive strike pay? So yes, you still receive strike pay, even if it's an illegal strike. But also on top of that, what the motion was, and I'm going to turn to Fred and Yolanda because maybe they can explain. They were at the motion today, I wasn't. So maybe they can explain that motion a little bit more.
Well, there we go. And I'm happy Yolanda can jump in here too. What we wanted to do is make clear to our entire national union what is on the line here and to make sure that we had the highest level of support possible. So what the motion we passed says is that in part, so there's a lot of support going into this strike vote mobilization. There's all of the, the kind of strike averting and strike preparation work that's happening. There's of course picket pay and all the stuff that will happen during a strike, but we added a piece that's quite important that is in your hands. If you decide, should there be legislation, and if you make the decision to defy that legislation, our union said that it would indemnify workers, locals, and members against any fines associated with that. I'll be clear about this. Our union has had a previous history in this. Our hospital workers in the 80s defied legislation, went on a legal strike, and the leaders of the union, the division president, the national leaders went to jail. I'm already wearing orange. I'm ready to go.
Perfect. I did not wear that today purposely. I believe I was advised. I've got some folks here who are asking, when can we listen? I wish I could tell you, and I'm going to say this again. A no board report does not mean that you're going on strike automatically, right? You can request a no board report. and we not go on strike. That's happened before. We've actually had that happen almost every single time. But we will be in communication with folks. People will be knowing there will be meetings, etc. Jody is asking, why is the voting process a week long? Jody, part of the reason, and I think this is a great question, there are over 55,000 people that are participating in this strike vote. Imagine 55,000 people participating in the strike vote. And so this gives locals an opportunity to meet with members and make sure as many members as possible are able to do that. I have a question about, as an EA with special needs students, still be able to attend to school. Carol, if we're on strike, we're on strike, right? We do not go into work. Am I missing any of them? Folks, I'm just trying to go through, because what are some examples of possible fines for associated? They would be covered by national, but I would defer to Mona or Alex if they have an example.
I mean, the legislation puts caps on fines of $2,000 a day for individuals and $25,000 a day for a trade union. Those are the maximums. So, excuse me, sorry folks, I have a really bad cold. Those are the maximums, and so that does not mean that those would automatically be levied.
Thank you. Yeah. Michelle French is asking, is there a way to see how the strike vote is going throughout the week? And I think this is an excellent piece. Your local have contact people who are able to see how the strike vote is going in your local throughout the week. But here's what I'm going to ask you each to do. At your work site, as you're walking by in the morning, hey, Yolanda, how you doing? Did you vote yet? When you sit down to lunch or coffee break, or, you're doing bus duty, hey, Fred, did you vote yet? Y'all need to be doing that. Right? You need to be encouraging each other to vote and vote and vote. There is going to be information going out to the locals. If you've got time and you can help your local, do any sort of calling and supporting of other members, like literally, even if you can only give like half an hour a night because you've got, or maybe it's an hour because your kid is at hockey practice and you're sitting in the car bored. If you could help out your local and make some of those calls to people who haven't, that would be amazing. Heidi is asked about being unsure about the 25%. Yeah, so what is being asked by the government in the school boards is that for your first 5 days of short-term leave, which is after you're 11 at 100%, if you qualify, meaning you're taking 5 or more days and you qualify, they want to pay you 25% of your wage for those 5 days. But it's not a guarantee that everyone qualifies for it. It's very ambiguous what the language means, but at the end of the day, it's a concession and we're not interested. Work to rule. Again, I'm going to tell you, not happening. It's been passed. Folks have been very clear with their with their leadership that they aren't interested in doing it. Keenan, interesting to see the popularity of wage parity. And you're suggesting the OSBCU is not interested in working on it. I would suggest that you take a look at the OSBCU website and you see our proposals where we have actually proposed a working group to discuss wage parity across the province. We're very interested in working on it. Who isn't interested in working on it is your government and your boss at the school board. No to work to rule. I think I got it. You guys don't want work to rule. Fair enough. Got it. It's on me. I got it. Members, Sarah, people are asking if you have got booked or approved vacation, short-term sick leave. Lots of folks are asking those questions.
Yeah, so what I've been doing is trying to post in the chat or in response to those an FAQ that's on the OSBCU website, because I know there is a huge range of questions, and I think that the OSBCU strike pay and benefits FAQ answers most of them. So there's a number of different questions in the one you just posed about different types of leave, that kind of thing, and vacation. But I think this FAQ will answer all of your questions. So we'll post it now in the chat so that everybody can see it.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great idea. Oh, if the strike happens, it said that we can go to our nearest school. Sarah, do you want to just quickly talk about that? We'll be talking about it more if and when we do go on strike, but maybe you can share what that means.
Yeah, so you will be able to picket at the picketing location closest to you, and regional picketing strike committees will be communicating picket locations closer to a strike deadline. and you'll have that information available to you. Picket captains will be getting in touch with you to talk with you about your preferred picket location closest to you.
Sonia is asking a really good question about hardship with car payments and mortgages. She's asking about what about people struggling to pay rent and other bills? Yes, there is hardship committees. There are letters that can be provided. There are a lot of things. And as we get closer to if that is a reality for strike, more of that information will be coming out. So Ashley's asking a really interesting question. You have any recommendations for those, even with the $325 and a raise will still be well below 39K in terms of trying to get our local boards to possibly increase our salaries. So Ashley, the $3.25 an hour raise is for every year of the collective agreement. So it works out if you are a 10-month member to being close just over I think $12,000 in 3 years. But increases for salaries are at the central table. They are not at the local table. And so this is why we are fighting for all of us to get that. Come on, 1201, I'm ready. I hear you, but I'm not waking up at 1201. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I love you, but I'm not doing it. Just trying to think. Really good point here that I want to raise up from Leanne Kennedy. Ford government is famous for backing down from their half-baked ideas once they encounter a backlash. A strong strike mandate now would be the strongest backlash they ever seen. Like, if I could give you a standing ovation for that, Leanne, I completely would give that. Can the board, and Mona, we talked about this today, so I'm going to turn this to you. Can you be fired if you strike?
No. Well, I mean, they can try. No, it would be, if you are participating in a legal strike, then you are protected by the Labor Relations Act, and that you have the right to strike. And that is something that if you were to be fired for doing, we would go to the labor board and get your job back. It is for sure not something that the legislation contemplates that, and we definitely have avenues to get you back to work if the employer were to terminate someone who was exercising their legal right to strike.
And Mona, I have a follow-up question. What if I'm a contract or temporary or casual worker, or what if I'm on probation? Do I still have a right to strike?
Absolutely. Same applies.
Carl's just clarified, equality for wage in all school boards for teachers was achieved for strike teachers when they went on strike. Carl, I am not aware of that.
Checked. I just checked the York Catholic and the York Public, and they get different wages, the teachers. They don't all have the same wage.
Yeah, sorry. So I think there's maybe been a miscommunication somewhere. The government has said they will not in any way, shape, or form close schools. So I'm worried that they will try and replace us. Hey, Barry, I'm going to tell you this right now. We have people who have their children staying at home because there are not enough people at the schools to support them. We have classrooms being cleaned every other day because we don't have enough custodians to do the work. The reason why we don't have enough people is because they treat us so poorly and pay us so poorly. If they could replace us, they already would have by now. And if you think they can replace you at a lower cost, I'm not sure where they will find them. So I think what we need to do is stand tall and stand proud and call them on it. They can't replace us now, and they definitely won't be able to find 55,000 of us. Yes, we are fighting for job security. Just going to answer that quickly. How much would strike pay be? I think this is a great question because people might be wondering this. Strike pay is $300 a week based on 20 hours of picket duty, typically 4 hours every day. And that strike pay is not something that you have to claim. I know that people have asked about ODSP. I know that people have asked about a couple of different things. No, it's not taxed. You are not employed at the time. It's what the union gives you as a member. So it's not a taxable piece. So it's $300. And in addition, then National also covers our benefit premiums.
From day one.
From day one. Yeah. From day one. Thanks. Good call. Vito, they have not proposed taking away the top-up credit. You can see what their proposal is on our website. If families come and support us, can our kids strike with us? Absolutely. I want to see our kids out there. And what a great learning lesson about the importance of unions and of really standing up to bullies. If locals are doing top up, it's two different entries, Mike. And I know that has been covered a couple of times, but it is two separate entries because one is from national and the other one is from your local. I'm going to answer this now. The purple shirts, I'm going to be very clear because I see Mike staring at me. The purple shirts, I want you all to picture ordering 30,000 of anything. And on top of that, there is a supply chain issue. So Mike is working as hard as he can to get the purple shirts out as quickly as he can. We were not expecting there to be a supply issue. And I believe one of their machines broke. It's kind of like why people can't get their cars fixed right now too. But as soon as they are out, they will be out. I get there's still lots to do before the strike actually starts, but let's say if we vote yes, then nothing changes. When is the earliest that we could be on strike? We will not be on strike before, even if I could magically make everything happen, if I could just wave a wand and nothing will happen before the end of September. I can't make it go any faster. I think that's the best. Your school is 100% for strike vote. Love it. Can the board bring in contract cleaners such as Sunshine while we're on strike? That's called scabbing, and I hope you all are at the picket line, and I hope you all are preventing them from coming in if that would happen. Kathy is asking for 325 is great. What's the lowest offer? You folks will tell us what the lowest offer is that we are willing to accept. It's not something that we accept. It's what you as workers would accept. How many weeks of strike pay? Fred or Yolanda, how many weeks of strike pay do we have in our fund?
You go, Yolanda, you go.
Oh, we just need to get her to unmute. Oh. Fred, maybe you're going to have
to. This is why the tech workers who are part of school boards are so important. We all need tech support. Sorry about that. Yolanda would have told you that we have weeks and weeks worth. And here's the truth. It ain't going to last weeks and weeks, right? Because they can't run the schools without us. The parents won't let that happen, right? So you do not need to worry about money. The collective resources of our union are there. What we need to worry about is making sure that every one of our members stands together and that we build that collective power together. That's all you need to worry about, friends.
Now I can add. Because people sound anxious. Absolutely. I totally get it. And people sound scared. I absolutely get it. I've been down this road before. I'm an education worker myself, and I know how terrifying it is. But this time around, we don't have to worry at all. Because I know if you were here earlier at the very beginning and you heard what I said, and Fred, and Mark, and Candace, and then Laura's repeated so many times, that we're going to be with you at your side and fight with you until we win. And we absolutely meant it. And it also means finances and resources to get us all through this. Because when you rise, we all rise.
Awesome. Thank you. So Anna's asked, if our kids come, can the union sign off on volunteer hours? I wish. Unfortunately, there is legislation that does not allow children to get volunteer hours during the school day, believe it or not. So unfortunately, we can't do that. Instead of offering to pay our fines, if we defy back to work legislation, why not increase the strike pay? Suzanne, strike pay is actually an item that has to go to the floor of convention to be debated and voted on. And so that's not something that can change just unilaterally. And so that's why having the opportunity to defy back to work is really, really important, because this allows us to continue to fight instead of, having the government try and interfere. Can you bring your dog? Absolutely. Make sure you're on a pet friendly line though. Legal right to strike. If I end up defying back to work legislation, am I in a legal right to strike? No. If you defy back to work legislation, you are in an illegal strike situation. But again, if that is going to be a threat, a real threat, we will be bringing everybody together to have conversation around this. Michelle, how is the union defending our rights when the government gives false information? First of all, I'm going to tell you the best way to defend your rights is for you as a worker to stand up. You are the union. And so when people start flapping their gums, feel free to stand up and say why it is so important that you are continuing to fight. He gives false information because people, believe his story, and it's unfortunate. But there's lots of things that you can share on our Facebook pages to push back. If you have members crossing a picket line, will the school board pay them to work? I would hope that the school board wouldn't pay them to work, but there are some dirty bosses out there. I just would remind folks that, you know what? You're on a strike for only so long, and eventually you got to go back to work together and think about how your coworkers are going to feel if you cross the line. So that is how I will say that. QP, people are asking about scabs. First of all, QP cannot protect you from scabs doing your job. There isn't anything but you protect yourself from scabs doing your job. You protect yourself by having conversations with your coworkers and expressing why it's so important that we stand in solidarity. You talk out in your community about why it's so important to stand in solidarity so that people don't come in and do your jobs. And then I know that the question has come, well, what if they show up? That's where our regional headquarters are going to be looking at having fly squads, to be setting up picket lines where we find out that this work is going to be doing. The earliest is the could be on strike is, sorry, you're right, the end of October. God love me. It is already the end of September, Stephanie. It feels like September in the year 2029 at this point. OMERS and LTD payments. So this is a really good point. LTD payments are covered in the, that will be a conversation that is happening with your local. OMERS payments are not covered, but you will be able to pay back afterwards. And I'm going to tell people the amount of your pension daily is very, very small and a very, very easy one to pay back once the strike is over. I'm just, if anyone sees a question that I have missed or that needs.
Laura,
Yeah,
maybe you could address the local ballot and the local vote. Sorry, I'm trying to get my words out, but you can know what I mean.
Yeah. So some locals have chosen to do a local strike vote at the same time as their central strike vote. If you belong to a local that is doing that, I'm sure your local has communicated that to you already. And you will see 2 ballots when the ballot opens on Friday. Not every local is doing a local strike vote, and that is okay because that's, what local autonomy is about. So some of you might be with locals that are not doing a local vote, and so you will only see 1 ballot, and that will be for the central strike alone. Corinne, I'm going to tell you that the funds are there for the strike pay, and I know that Candace, when she was with us in August, said, they'll cash in investments to keep us supported. So the money is there. I believe we worked it out one time that currently in the account, I think is 6 weeks, but there is additional money that is available. You mentioned earlier between the strike vote ending and the 5 days after the government could mandate something. No, the strike vote will end, right? And at some point we will ask for a no board report. Once the no board report is received, there is a 17-day window before you're in a legal strike position. Being in a legal strike position does not mean that you are on strike. It means that you're in a legal position to go on strike. The added interesting piece around the school boards is that we also must give a 5-day notice for any job action that we are taking. And that can happen within the 17-day waiting period, or it can happen afterwards. The government's up-to-date offer, Arun, was actually posted yesterday in a graphic. It was a whole lot of no's.
Laura, there's also some questions about just picket times, picket locations, picket areas. If you could just.
Yeah, so picket times, picket locations, picket all that good stuff. All of that will be addressed following the strike vote if we head into a strike situation. And we will be able to, there will be lots of meetings, lots of opportunities for that information to go out. And it's 5 calendar days that we would need to give notice for, not 5 working days. Any more dates for negotiations? We are back together on the 6th and 7th. One of the reasons why it's good to have a very strong strike vote before we go back to the table. And then we have the 17th and 18th. Are we going to have signs for the parents and publics to know why we're striking? Yeah, we've got lots of stuff that's coming, lots of stuff still going. The information on the website and Facebook, share it with everybody, share it at your dinner table, share it with your great Aunt Bessie, who, constantly says that, we're lazy. Whoever you need to send it, you need to do that.
What's the questions about benefits, Laura?
Yeah, so let's talk about benefits. If you are eligible for picket pay, the National Union will be covering your benefit premiums, both the employer share and your share. But it is based on, doing your picket duty, and that's per the strike regulations.
And Laura, I know there are a lot of questions about benefits and picket pay specifically. So we've put the FAQ that's available on the website back in the chat, just so folks can go there. There are a lot of these questions that are spelled out there, so you can visit that, and also feel free to share that with coworkers who are having those same questions in the workplace.
So Judith is asking, are we willing to meet in the middle on some of our concerns and requests at the bargaining table? I would rather have the board hire more staff and have full-time hours for everyone instead of a pay increase. And Judith, while I appreciate that that's how you feel, pay increase was the #1 priority of workers this round. That being said, meeting in the middle also looks like the other side meeting you in the middle. And to date, we have not seen anything other than no, and a complete disinterest to even talk about things like full-time hours and staffing. So again, I would just say the vote ends October 2nd. 5 days need to. Why are we not able to strike before the end of October? Beth, that's because you have to do a no board report and receive it. And there's a legal waiting period of 17 days before we are legally allowed to strike. So there is some, what I would call bureaucratic pieces that have to be in place around strikes. When we're legislated back to work while on strike, we are then forced into mediation. That has not done well for us in the past. Is there another option? So, Suzanne, we've never been on strike. So I'm not sure about the mediation piece, but I'm going to defer to Mona or Alex.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Laura? I just was answering something in the chat.
Yeah, when we are legislated back to work while on strike, we are then forced into mediation. That has not done well for us in the past. Is there another option?
Oh, you're talking about interest arbitration, I think, Laura.
I'm thinking so, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, so legislation, and this is what Laura was touching on a little bit earlier, will often force us to an arbitration process. And so the arbitrator is someone who is, they are independent from the other side. But we know that just the nature of the interest arbitration process is that it tends to favor the status quo. And I think what we've heard loud and clear this round is that we need to break the status quo. The status quo has not worked. And so I think that's the concern. Sometimes people say, well, arbitration sounds like a fast and easy way to get what we need because, we let the lawyer, I go before the interest arbitrator and we come back with something. But I think the concern is that something that comes back is not likely to address the core concerns that you have, at least not anywhere near in the way that we need them addressed. And so that's why these bigger discussions are happening.
Can you also, while you're on there, the no board report, can you explain what that is for folks? Or Mona, if your voice is going out, I totally get that you're...
I have just refreshed, so I think I'll be okay. Excuse me, I thought I was. So a no board report, it's called that. We're getting into some weird labor history now. There used to be something in Ontario called conciliation boards. And I'm confident that nobody on this call remembers them because I think they haven't been used since the mid-1960s. But basically at a certain point, they stopped appointing these conciliation boards, which were boards that tried to mediate basically collective agreements. And so now they always issue what's called a no board report. And so what that does, basically what that signals is we're at the end of the conciliation process. We've tried in conciliation. We haven't got where we need to go. And so it's a way of moving the process along. And once that is issued, that starts the clock towards parties being in a legal strike position. And that's often the pressure that we need to get from the other side, right? Look, if the government came in these past couple days and the employers and said, we'll give you everything you need, we wouldn't need to go to these steps. But we know realistically that is often what we need to get that pressure. And it does, of course, move us towards a strike position. So that's what that is. I also want to be clear, though, once we get the no board report, that does not mean we stop negotiating. We do try and negotiate. We will definitely be negotiating between the no board and a strike deadline. So it's not just that we walk away and don't talk to the other side for 17 days. I want to be clear about that as well.
Perfect, thank you. People are asking if they sign up for picket pay, but don't join picketing for various reasons. I mean, you don't have to picket. But if you do not picket, you will not be receiving money. And then that's a choice definitely that you would need to make. However, what I would suggest is that we are only as strong as each other. And I think that is like what's really, really important here tonight is that folks recognize that together we win. Looking at separate interest is not going to help move this forward and defeat this government and push back. And I'm going to be clear, we've pushed back on them before. We need to push back again. If the government calls a forced vote, how will it impact the bargaining process and you can reject it? If they call a forced vote, I will tell you right now, I actually think a forced vote would be very foolish from this government, knowing what they know about how we organize. So you want to make sure you don't get a forced vote. Let's make sure that we have a very high percentage of participation and a high percentage of a strike vote, because a forced vote is even harder to get with an organized workforce such as yourselves. Alrighty, I think we are coming close to our time. Out of respect, we do. Larry is asking, any chance that the government will lock us out before we go on strike? Definitely. Once you get to a legal strike position, you are also in a position where the government can lock you out. The school boards must ask for permission from the government before they change working conditions, but they could. They could lock us out. It would seem a little strange if they locked us out, but who knows? But at the end of the day, we'll be ready. And listen, I just want to recognize what some of you have said. It will be challenging. Every single one of us, we're, just getting $300 a week. I understand. Like for me, it will be challenging. For you, it will be challenging. At this point, we're at a place where if we don't fight now, then when? I don't know about you, but I cannot afford to watch or be reminded again and again on people that are in right now on food bank lines picking up food, who have lost already their cars or their homes, have moved back in with their parents. If you yourself has not suffered a financial hardship under this government, I'm going to guarantee you at least one of your coworkers has. We cannot afford to wait any longer. We have to fight today. And I think, Megan Bailey is asking, what does it mean to be locked out? What that means is that the government or the school board say, you can't come to work, you're on strike. And lots of people asking, where is the YouTube for this? When it becomes available, we will post it on our Facebook page. The link, we'll send it out to your local presidents for distribution. If you've signed up for the updates, we'll send it out through there. Okay. At this time, I want to just do a big shout out to, our guests. Yolanda and Fred and Mark and Candace have already boarded a plane. So huge thank you to them for joining us tonight. A huge thank you to the staff and executive board who are on here answering questions. We do save all of these questions and we'll be working through them as well. And if there are any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Don't forget to post your photo with OSBCU GOTV 2022. It's the hashtag. I can't wait to see tomorrow just flooded with Get Out the Vote pictures. So thank you, everyone. And also just another really big shout out to Constantine and to Sandra, our intrepid interpreters who provide interpretation for us when we do these. I really cannot appreciate you enough. Take care, everyone.